A dusty road wound through an ancient forest, where the trees stood so thick that sunlight barely pierced the canopy. Along this path walked a man, thin, dressed in worn-out clothes, his shoulders hunched and his gaze fixed on the ground. His name was Ananda, and he was so poor that some days he didn't know if he'd have anything to eat that evening. Years of poverty had taught him to walk quietly, as if apologizing for his very existence. He avoided people's eyes, afraid to see contempt or pity in them. He never smiled. What could possibly be funny in a life where every day was just like the last, filled with hunger and humiliation? And then, on this particular day, as the sun began to set and painted the sky in golden hues, Ananda saw a figure ahead. Beneath an old banyan tree sat a man in simple saffron robes. His face radiated such profound peace that it seemed as though all the chaos of the world simply passed him by. Ananda recognized him. It was the Buddha. The poor man's heart began to race. He had heard of the great teacher, of how he had unlocked the mysteries of life and could answer any question. Ananda hesitated. Should he really bother such a great man? Was it right? But then the Buddha himself looked up and met his gaze. There was not a trace of judgment in those eyes, only gentle awareness. Come closer, he said softly. Ananda approached, his knees trembling. He sank to the ground beside the teacher and sat in silence for a long time, unsure of how to begin. Finally, the words burst out on their own. Buddha, why am I so poor? The question sounded almost like a cry of despair. For years, Ananda had asked this of himself, of the heavens, of fate, but there had never been an answer. Perhaps the great teacher knows? The Buddha smiled, not mockingly, but with deep understanding. He paused for a moment, as if weighing his words, and then said, Because you do not practice generosity. Ananda flinched. Generosity. He had expected to hear something else, about karma from past lives, evil spirits, or the injustice of the world. But generosity? Teacher. Ananda's voice trembled with hurt and confusion. How can I practice generosity when I have nothing to give? I have no money, no food, no shelter. I live on alms myself. He nearly shouted the last words, tears welling in his eyes. How could a beggar be generous? It felt like a cruel joke. But the Buddha did not get angry. He continued to look at Ananda with the same calm kindness, and there was such depth in that gaze that the poor man felt his anger begin to melt away. You possess 5 treasures, the Buddha began slowly, with which you can practice generosity right now, and yet you do not use them. Ananda sat up straighter, wiping his eyes. 5 treasures? What are they? Please, teacher, he whispered. Tell me what these 5 treasures are. The Buddha raised his hand and gently touched Ananda's face. The first, he said, is your face. With your face, you can give smiles to others. But you do not. You walk around looking as if the whole world is your enemy. Yet a smile costs nothing, and it can warm another person's heart on the coldest of days. Ananda touched his own face. When was the last time he had smiled? He couldn't remember. Years of hardship had taught him to frown, not to rejoice. The second, the Buddha continued, pointing to the poor man's eyes, is your eyes. With your eyes, you can look upon others with love and care. But you do not. You lower your gaze and hide from people. Yet a kind look can support someone more than words ever could. Ananda remembered how, just that morning, he had walked past an old woman who had fallen at the market. He hadn't stopped, hadn't even looked. He had just kept walking, because he was afraid she might ask for help he couldn't give. The third, the Buddha's voice grew even softer, is your mouth. With your mouth, you can speak kindly to others. But you do not. You stay silent, or you complain. Yet a kind word, sincere praise, or a word of comfort. All of these are free, and yet priceless. A lump formed in Ananda's throat. He remembered the boy who had brought him leftover food just yesterday. Ananda had taken it in silence, without even properly thanking him. He had just eaten, resentful that he was forced to accept charity. The fourth, the Buddha placed his hand over Ananda's heart, is your heart. With your heart, you can wish happiness upon others. But you do not. Your heart is full of resentment, envy, and bitterness. You look at the wealthy and feel anger. You see others' joy and suffer because it is not yours. And yet, wishing well for others is the simplest form of generosity, one that demands absolutely nothing. Ananda closed his eyes. It was the truth, a bitter, burning truth. He had been envious. He had been angry at those who had more than he did. He had never rejoiced in anyone else's good fortune, only mourned his own misfortune. And the fifth, the Buddha withdrew his hand, is your body. With your body, you can do good for others. You can help carry water, offer a hand to someone who has fallen, or sweep the path in front of another's home. But you do not. You think only of your own survival and walk right past the needs of others. Tears streamed down Ananda's cheeks, but these were different tears, not tears of resentment, but of realization. The Buddha was right, completely right. All his life, Ananda had believed he was poor because he had nothing, but in truth, he was poor because he gave nothing. He had locked himself in the cage of his own poverty, deciding that since he had no money, he could not be generous. But generosity is not about money. Generosity is a state of the soul. Teacher, Ananda whispered through his tears, I understand. I have been rich all along, and I never knew it. The Buddha smiled. Wealth does not begin in your pocket. It begins in your heart. A person who gives smiles, kind glances, warm words, sincere wishes, and helping hands, that person is richer than any king, because they create goodness around them, and goodness always returns. But how will I become wealthy? Ananda asked. If I give all of this away, will it truly change my life? You are as wealthy, the Buddha replied, rising slowly to his feet, as you allow yourself to be. If you allow yourself to be generous, even when you have nothing, wealth will come to you. Because people are drawn to those who radiate warmth. They help those who help others. They return kindness with kindness. Start small, with a smile, and you will see how the world around you begins to change. With those words, the Buddha slowly continued down the road, fading into the twilight. Ananda sat beneath the banyan tree until night fell completely. His soul was no longer filled with its usual bitterness, but with something new, hope, perhaps, or understanding. The next morning, when he woke on his mat in the corner of someone else's shed, he stood up and, for the first time in many years, looked into a small, cracked mirror. His face was gaunt, but a light had appeared in his eyes. Ananda smiled, just because he could, and that was his first gift in his new life. That day, he helped an old woman carry water from the well. He praised a child drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick. He told a merchant, "May your day be blessed." He looked people in the eye, with warmth, not fear. And a miracle happened. The merchant he had wished well gave him an apple, just because. The woman he had helped with the water invited him to share her meal. The child he had praised brought him a flower. Not even a full day had passed, and the world had already begun to change. Within a month, Ananda found work as an assistant in a workshop. Within 3 months, the master entrusted him with managing small tasks. Within a year, Ananda had money, a roof over his head, and the respect of those around him. But most importantly, he had something else, joy. He was no longer a man waiting for life to hand him scraps. He was a man who gave. And every morning, as he rose, he remembered the Buddha's words, asterisk, you are as wealthy as you allow yourself to be. Asterisk, and he would smile, because now he allowed himself to be rich, not in money, but in spirit. And that was a wealth no poverty could ever take away. If these words resonated with you, please support this video with a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which of the 5 gifts of generosity you will start practicing today. A smile, a kind glance, warm words, sincere wishes, or helpful actions. Take care of your heart, take care of yourself, and may every day be not merely lived, but filled with warmth, meaning, and the goodness that always returns.